everyone, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I am your host, Jason Miles, and I have a couple special guest hosts tonight. My main partner in crime and slime, Pascal Robert, will not be here tonight. He said there were too many white people on screen for him, and he likes his ratio of coloreds to whites to be a little more even. So let me bring in my first guest host for this evening. You know him as our undercover operative infiltrating the deep state. He is Deep State Kuba.
Hello, everyone. In Pascal's stead, peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to everyone listening.
Pascal's going to be so mad at me for that. And we have another special guest host. This person actually has been very instrumental in the growth of this channel. You may know him from his Critical Cuts videos, and you may know him for constantly putting his foot very deep in his mouth. He is the Douglas Lain.
Thank you for having me. I will keep my foot out of my mouth tonight.
That's it's fine. It's what you're known for. Controversy.
Yeah.
And before we bring in our special guest this evening, and we're going to talk about Cyberpunk or Cyberdystopia, I definitely went down a bit of a rabbit hole the last few days, rewatching some old quote-unquote cyberpunk documentaries, where I got some of the footage for this clip. So did you get a chance to see the clip, Doug, that I made?
Yeah. It was awesome.
Was it cyberpunky enough?
I thought it was really very cyberpunk. Did you see the little short film that I made? Did I ever send that to you?
You did, but I thought I wasn't supposed to talk about it because it's top secret.
No, it's okay. It's in a film festival. We're submitted to a film festival.
You didn't tell me it got put in the festival.
Well, it's not. We're waiting. We'll see if we get in. We submitted to a film festival. We're hoping we'll get in and then get distributed and become millionaires. And the cyberpunk movement will start again with this short film.
I would take video. Being a thousandaire right now.
A thousandaire would be good.
A thousandaire would be dope right now. Mm-hmm. What about you? Kuba's already a secret thousandaire. That's why he's sitting in his lush Death Star corporate suite.
Yeah, exactly. This is what you get when you have like entire dozens of thousands.
Dozens of thousands is better than I'm doing right now, Kuba.
Well, let me play the clip. Did our guest get a chance to see the clip? Our guest hasn't even seen the clip yet, has he?
Probably not. Show the clip.
Okay, show the clip.
From High Technology, the computer store, introducing Apple II, the easy-to-operate home computer. Just hook it up to your TV to create dazzling color displays. Or you can balance your checkbook. Kids can teach themselves arithmetic. Or the family can invent their own Pong games. The possibilities are endless. It's called Apple II, the personal computer. See it at High Technology, the computer store.
Sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. In fact, both local San Francisco papers are investing a lot of money to try and get a service just like that started. Science editor Steve Newman reports on one person already using the brand new system.
8 newspapers around the country are currently in the computer network, and within the next few weeks, 3 others will join in.
This is an experiment. We're trying to figure out what it's going to mean to us as editors and reporters and what it means to the home user. And we're not in it to make money. We're probably not going to lose a lot, but we aren't going to make much either.
Both the Examiner and Chronicle began service within the last 2 weeks and printed full-page ads about it. Of the estimated 2,000 to 3,000 home computer owners in the Bay Area, the Chronicle reports over 500 have responded by sending back coupons. Even though the electronic newspaper isn't as spiffy looking as the ads imply, people using the system are excited about its potential.
With this system, we have the option not only of seeing the newspaper on the screen, but also optionally we can copy it. So anything we're interested in, we could go back in again and copy it onto paper and save it.
Steve Newman, U-Center 4.
Well, it takes over 2 hours to receive the entire text of the newspaper over the phone, and with an hourly use charge of $5, the new telepaper won't be much competition for the 20-cent street edition.
There was once a time where information and communications technology were seen as having an emancipatory potential. To some in the 80s and 90s, we were on the verge of a techno-utopia. However, in recent years, this dream has turned to dust with the rise of big tech capitalism, algorithmic data collection, mass surveillance, and social media disinformation. What happened to the dream of a better tomorrow? Do we live in a cyberdystopia? And what are the prospects for emancipation from this freaky machine? We'll ask these questions and more. This is Revolution.
People do forget that there was no state-of-the-art in personal computing when I wrote Neuromancer, and that's why I was using the typewriter. Neuromancer and the first Macintosh were released in the same year, and someone told me recently in the same month. That's difficult for young people to imagine, I know. But I didn't know anyone who had a personal computer. There were almost none.
I understood that in a sense what you were talking about is that the power there was the power of the imagination, not the power of the machine.
When I wrote Neuromancer, there was effectively no internet to extrapolate from. I made it up. The cyberspace I made up isn't being used in Neuromancer in the way that we're using the internet today. In Neuromancer, it's all corporate, and a few cybernetic car thieves are skulking through it, attempting to steal tidbits of information. People aren't using it to exchange recipes with their relatives in West Germany. People aren't using it personally, and in my later work, I've had to deal with what the internet has become.
Right.
So I think that accounts for the difference. And what the internet has become is as much a surprise to me as the collapse of the Soviet Union was. Those are, definitely two things I didn't foresee about the future.
All right. Hope that clip gets everybody ready to go.
That was awesome.
I do love the last line in that interview where he does say, well, that cut, there's more that he says, but that he didn't think the collapse of the Soviet Union was a possibility when he was writing Neuromancer.
Yeah.
And a lot of this that we know as kind of cyberpunk or cyber, what would you call it? Futuristic, right? Like Philip K. Dick.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this was written in the Cold War or during the Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, Philip K. Dick is an interesting case because he's kind of proto-cyberpunk, but he's also, you can see how he's like more classical mid-century sci-fi, and even he does a bit of like fantasy mysticism with The Man in the High Castle. Yeah,
I mean, there are some books that you think of when you think of Philip K. Dick being the kind of proto-cyberpunk author, and the primary one would be Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah.
But that's only because of the movie, which is very aesthetically tied to the cyberpunk vision, I think. But I think that Philip K. Dick was a singular genius. He wasn't really of any particular, but he was. I would say he was of actually his time, which is the 50s and 60s and 70s. But that he transcended the genre that he was in. I would say, not to denigrate the genre, but
well, let's bring in our guest. Are you serious? Futurist, cyberpunk, and former editor of Mondo 2000. He has an upcoming book, Cyberdystopia. I'm sorry.
No,
Freaks
the Freaks in the Machine.
Freaks in the Machine. Sorry. About the Cyberdystopia.
Mm-hmm.
He is. Are you serious?
Wounded. Hi. How are y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Evening.
I'm hanging in there. I'm almost awake, so this should go very well.
I think this is a rare occasion. I think we're all in the same time zone.
Are we?
Is that right? Yeah.
That's scary. That's a scary thought.
And this is
Well, we
a
were
new one
supposed to
for me.
collapse everything, including time zones. Biology,
Everybody's on Beijing time.
space, time, whatever. Nothing collapsed. Well, I mean, things are collapsing, but
Well,
not correctly. Not.
When you
I
say
think it was-
we, you mean the cyberpunks are supposed to, or you mean all of society?
when you say we, let's kind of pull back a little bit here for those that are don't understand necessarily what cyberpunk is or the idea of cyberspace. What is cyberpunk?
Well, from what I understood, and I don't think Mondo 2000 was necessarily a cyberpunk magazine. It was sort of a generalist magazine with cyberpunk in the nose cone as an excuse to do whatever happened to pop into our heads. And some of the stuff that popped into our heads tended to be technotopian. Some of it tended to be sort of nihilistic in a very pop culture sense. Some of it tended to be dystopian right from the start. But cyberpunk was the use of technology by individuals in a way that was not considered allowed, not considered appropriate, that the technology wasn't meant for. It was sort of a disformation of the use of technology as released by the grand corporatists, who, by the way, also thought of themselves sort of as cyberpunk. I mean, it was kind of one culture. And we would go down to Silicon Valley and we would be in parties with people who were very much trying to hack the banking system. And
now, what years are you talking about right now?
In the late 80s, early
Okay.
90s, but starting in the late 80s, and you'd have the sort of masters of the universe there side by side with mad anarchists and crazed libertarians, and I mean the whole gamut. And I mean the sense, leaving aside cyberpunk science fiction and Gibson and so forth, the sense was that there was something new under the sun after a period during post-70s Reaganism and so forth, where there was a feeling of just being completely stuck, that nothing was happening at all, at least within the spirit of counterculture, left counterculture, or just weird freaks or what have you. Nothing was happening at all. And there was a feeling that this was something new that we could use to our own advantage, whether for personal purposes, for what would be called personal growth, which is kind of a gross term, but that sort of thing, or as a way to connect with collectivities that could cause problems mostly for mainstream culture. And then also people building stuff that they thought would be good and helpful to people. So there's multiple contradictory impulses going on. As I recall, Neuromancer, I haven't read it in an awfully long time. But Case was sort of mercenary. He was not an idealist. He was upset that he couldn't get off on speed, and really wanted to immerse himself in cyberspace, whether it was corporate cyberspace or, whether he could be just an outlaw hanging out at the edges. It was a rapturous place that wasn't filled with banality like it actually is. it was like a physical area. Excuse me, I'm getting some sore throat stuff going here. And
Well,
I mean, the metaphor with virtual reality, when Mondo 2000 started, it wasn't Facebook or the World Wide Web or, I mean, online discourse was kind of exciting, being on the well and so forth.
I mean, you're talking about the early days of Silicon Valley, but way before we know it as the land of opportunity and gentrification that it is now. It was still a literal open valley in San Jose.
I want to introduce Are You Serious in a way, because we introduced him, but I want people to understand who he is a little deeper by telling a story, and just to say actually that I'm really pleased to be here with you now, Are You, because and I feel like it's a sign that I have, despite every appearance to the contrary, have accomplished something in my life. Because when I was in my early 20s, now I got what you got. When I was in my early 20s, I used to read Mondo 2000 magazine, and I remember particularly like a visceral memory of being on the campus of Portland State University and picking up a copy of Mondo 2000 and feeling like both connected to this really cool magazine about cyberpunk culture, but it also just really seemed to be about the present in a weird way in like 1992 or 1993, and feeling both like connected to it and like realizing that somewhere in the world there are people who were creating this thing, and I wasn't one of them, and I wished I could be, involved. I was a writer at that time, and it's like I want to get into Mondo 2000. I want to be a part of this thing. But here I am. I'm a little nobody, but I can read it and it's great. And now I'm helping to bring you to the world. So bring you back into people's minds. So I'm pleased to have done that.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed...
Do I make you feel old? Did I make you feel old with that story?
I am old. My teeth are gone for the moment. That's just a momentary glitch in the matrix.
In the matrix.
But,
yeah.
It is kind of gross, but yeah, thank you for that. I've really enjoyed. I mean, I've been writing this sort of mix of memoir and contemplation of the tropes of Mondo 2000 and its predecessors for about 12 years. But getting in touch with you and having you want it to be, first of all, about ideas really helped me to focus. And you said you wanted something that was about cyberpunk, which I probably didn't do. I probably made it about freak culture more than I made it about cyberpunk culture. Mm-hmm. But I sketched a line going back to the Living Theater in like 1968 to cyberpunk and whatever has whatever it has deformed into now, where there really shouldn't be and can't be counterculture per se, because there's no culture. Yeah, what was I saying?
You were saying how happy you were to know me, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I am very happy to know you, and I hope people out there are also happy to know you, continue to know you. But
yeah, I'm not going anywhere. So or I'll go somewhere and I'll come back again, get knocked down, you get back up again.
Okay, I'm gonna have the camera accidentally look at my Steal the Singularity t-shirt.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
What's the story behind the t-shirt?
Well, I came up with the name Steal the Singularity when I was working with the Transhumanist group, and various things about that. I mean, I knew I was going to be disturbed by it even before I got hired, but I needed to get hired. So, I played with it. I felt very fortunate to be able to bring people like John Shirley and Eric Davis and some very hip and critical and thoughtful people into their magazine for a while. So that was pretty cool. But I came up with the idea of Steal This Singularity. I wrote a little manifesto, which is included in the book. And basically about the idea, not really believing in the singularity, but basically the idea that any accelerated high-tech extreme future should not be owned and dominated by big capital or big states. And it comes from Abby Hoffman, Steal This Book, way back when. I was a Yippie. Stuff to Steal This singularity has some authenticity to it. And the Yippies, it's not really well known, but the Yippies really started computer culture in a way because they were at the center of phone freak culture. And the original Phone Freak magazine, I can't remember the name of it now, actually had Abby Hoffman as an honorary editor, and was created out of the headquarters on Bleecker Street, where the Yippies and the Zippies, the original Zippies, used to hang out. And John Draper, Captain Crunch, used to hang out there. So it was a wonderful little Yippie world of whistling into telephones and ripping off Ma Bell and making free phone calls. And that really fed into what became the hacker culture.
How did they do that? I mean, explain again, just for people who don't know, what Phone Freak was, who Captain Crunch was, and just what they did.
Well, Draper discovered that a whistle that was included as a toy or a prize in a Captain Crunch cereal box, you could use it, whistle into the phone, and it would let you make free long-distance phone calls, which was it was an issue back then. There was such a thing as long-distance phone calls. I mean, now I suppose there are some issues with overseas possibly, but it might seem obscure. But yeah, so he was able to make long-distance calls, and he also did some other things. So he's able to get on the phone. He and Steve Wozniak were able to get on the phone and call Richard Nixon at the White House and ask him to send over a pizza and things like that. There's a lot of playfulness to that culture. I'm really feeling pretty good about flashing back to the early times because I think it's interesting information that maybe a lot of people don't know. Like the Homebrew Computer Club in the late 70s, early 80s, really formulated by Lee Felsenstein, who was an editor at the Berkeley Barb and sort of an honorary member of the Black Panther Party. So those impulses were deeply sketched into computer culture at first. And you had Jobs and Wozniak there as part of that group, as well as another people who, some of whom turned into greedheads or whatever. And it's deeply woven into the impulse behind the original personal computer. And of course, the net came from DARPA, but the enthusiasm about using the net and participating in it and using it as a place for discourse came quite a bit from counterculture kind of impulse.
And I wanted to get into that whole, the net comes from the way to use the internet early on came from the counterculture. Do you think it comes out of a lot of Timothy Leary?
I mean, he would have liked to have thought so. I think, the original Hackers Conference was really organized by Stuart Brand, the Whole Earth Catalog, somebody of pretty dubious politics, actually. But he had various enthusiasms that really are a part of this discussion about how technologies have particular meanings or potentials that we ascribe to them that will change the world, which is increasingly dubious. I mean, there was an enthusiasm for Marshall McLuhan, of course, and how he felt visual technologies and the collapsing of distance by travel and by technology were going to change things. He didn't think things were going to go well. He didn't think it was change things for the better, but counterculture people kind of picked up just on the fun part of McLuhan, that it was retribalizing us, and we could be dancing in the woods wearing our penis sheaths and enjoying cyberspace or whatever. I'm jumping a little back and forth in time here, sorry. But Brand was part of that idea that the nature of a technology or the nature of a development actually implied a change in culture and economics and social structure. And that was the leading line, a sort of ideology that carried us through the 1980s and the 1990s. And it was, appears to be a mistake at this point. But,
When was there a moment where you thought to yourself, yeah, that optimism was definitely a mistake?
First of all, I was a Yippie, so...
Can you explain to people what a Yippie is?
Youth International Party, started by Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, recognized that counterculture and the new left were sort of merging. In some ways, even going back to Tom Hayden, 1961, Port Huron statement that formulated SDS, that there was a countercultural aspect to all that, and that the people with the long hair at that time, who tended to be of a type that it doesn't particularly imply anymore, were part of some new emergent thing that had a lot of promise for creating maybe something that was about sharing, about post-capitalism, about actual individual liberty and egalitarianism could mix together, and that pleasure and ecstasis and selfish enjoyment could actually have a place within a revolutionary politics. So the Yippies were, that merger of psychedelic, ecstatic counterculture and a radical new leftism as a response, particularly to the Vietnam War, but also to the civil rights and Black Power struggles that were going on at that time, and to the general feeling among young people that they didn't want this world. And at that time, what they wanted was something a lot wilder, which is right now is something that I don't think we really have a feeling for. It looks like wildness may look to us more like the wrong way insurrectionists that we see on TV today, but that was what it was back then. It was Youth International Party. It was to the degree that it's discussed in media today, it's usually discussed in a sort of a liberal way as people who are against the war and for civil rights. But the Yippies really were tended to be supportive of the Weather Underground and Black Panther Party, and it was, to be blunt, a fantasy for a period of an immediate revolution. So when you ask me when I figured out that this shit wasn't going to happen, first it was 1973, very
it's an interesting year you point out.
Yeah, very well covered in a biography of Jerry Rubin by a guy named Pat Thomas. Sort of everybody knew in 1973 that one thing was over, sort of. I mean, there were aspects of it that continued on, but the instant revolution then was over. So we enter the 1980s as High Frontiers magazine, and then as Reality Hackers, and then as Mondo 2000, already predisposed to watch our shit collapse and laugh at it at the same time as we're trying to make a new revolution, a new change happen. So we're holding those things in our minds all the time, right from the start. We're in the 90s. I mean, we're writing for Gen X. We don't want to seem too optimistic or idealistic because we're writing for Gen X. Yeah, whatever, never mind. So yeah, we have all those contradictions going on when we're doing this. But I mean, there are principles of sort of technotopia that people ascribe to the technology at the time. That I mean, the fundamental, and one of our favorite things, I think, which came to us. I mean, we already sort of knew this, but it came to us in our first issue of Mondo 2000 as a result of an interview with Richard Stallman, he who cannot be named, and he it was his basic thing was you're creating scarcity in a situation where there is none. That digital stuff can be infinitely copied and can be instantly shared with anybody else who is online. So any attempt to erect turnstiles around it or to prevent people from having a program, which is what he was focused on at the time, but having some music, having just about anything, it's creating scarcity where there doesn't have to be any. And I mean that really was put to the test in the late 90s with file sharing. And what happened there, I know somebody else is trying to talk. Let me just say this quickly. What happened there is a mixture of capital and convenience. That some people actually were very good at creating technologies that were attractive. For example, with music, that you could subscribe, and it just worked better than the file sharing, and you knew what you were getting. You wouldn't try to download one song and discover you didn't have that. Yeah, you wouldn't get viruses. So much of what has happened, aside from sort of inevitability in our underestimation in the 90s of the power of big capital and the big state, so much was a matter of people making successful software and then saying, oh, well, Don't Be Evil doesn't scale. Let's make this as big as we possibly can.
I mean, I definitely want to put a pin in that conversation about technology and music. As Cooper and I we're having a conversation about that earlier today. But we do have a super chat question from JB. Thank you for the question, JB. As a yippie messing with ARPANET freaking and tech in the late 60s, 70s, when did you personally realize capitalism was absorbing computer/internet tech?
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, you had to buy your computers from somebody. We had Macs. We loved them. Dan Kotke was part of our group. He was one of the originators of the Mac. He's sort of known to be sort of the person who tried to create a border between Wozniak and Jobs. So, I mean, it was always inscribed in there. I mean, we lived in the society that we lived in. And as yippies, I mean, the yippie in the 70s, the idea was to steal stuff from corporations and, to use what you needed to use to do what you wanted to do. So I don't think there was ever a sudden realization. It was always, that these tools were being created by companies, and they were doing a pretty good job of it. Sometimes, I think, making them more difficult to use than they needed to be for purposes of profit. But yeah, there was never really a moment of, oh my goodness, yes, capitalism is here in the United States. I'm so surprised. No, I don't know if that answered the question, but.
Doug, did you have a question?
Well, I had a thought. It was first of all, you way back mentioned that you were aiming everything at Gen X, and I'm probably the only Gen Xer in the four corners here.
Well, what am I?
Like, aren't you a millennial?
No,
you're so young looking.
No,
are you sure?
I was born in the 70s.
I know you're Gen Xer too. Now that you mention it, I just forgot for a second. I thought everyone's younger than me. No, so Jason and I are millennials. No, Jason and I are Gen Xers, and the thing about being part of Gen X is that the millennials hate the boomers, but so did Gen X, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't call you boomers, but yeah. we often called you mom and dad. and we hated you guys. We thought you'd screwed it all up. And you know, when I was reading Mondo 2000, I did not think of it as a magazine that extended into the 60s. I didn't think of it as something with the continuity back to the New Left or the old. I thought of it as something of Gen X and for Gen X. So why did you lie to me? And then
we were a
also,
bunch of old fuckers. Yeah. I mean, it was really appealed to a layer cake of generations. I mean, boomers loved it for their reasons, and Gen Xers loved it for their reasons. But we made sure to have a snarky voice because that was who we were, really. So, I mean, in a sense, even though I talk about the Yippies in the 60s, I'm sort of a 70s person in a lot of ways. I adopted to irony very easily. I fell in love with Andy Warhol, which is a terrible admission, but I still feel the love to this day. I always had a place in my heart for deadpan, and when Gen X came along, they seem to have that place too. So I'm like a schizophrenic combination of Gen X and Boomer, which the only thing left for me is to hate the millennials and Generation Z for
get off my lawn
for being such pinched tight-ass fuckers.
But
Gen Z,
I didn't say
knock
that.
Gen Z,
Don't
man.
quote me. No.
Yeah, Generation Z, they're not pinched. No. I have Gen Z kids. They're not. They're fine. They're.
I'm sure they're fine.
They're not like millennials. They're much
right.
cooler than millennials. I want all the Gen Zers to know I'm with you, kids.
But,
hey, Philly kids.
I mean, we're talking about
Hashtag
generations.
me too. Yeah.
Right now, and there was a lot of innovation and experimentation with technology that came out of different parts of the cyberpunk community and the left before that, the Yippies, and a lot of that misuse of technology that you were talking about. Getting a corporate-made computer and then using it to hack into a banking system.
Right.
That led to different kinds of breakthroughs and different usability applications that created innovation, some of which was captured by big corporations, but some of which big companies are still trying to fight and put down and represent an inconvenience, if not a threat.
Right.
Do you think that there's still that kind of experimentation, that kind of deliberate misuse? There are still people who are both able and interested and have the time and the resources to be hackers or freaks, with the technology being this sophisticated and ubiquitous? Or has all that gone over to the corporate side? Or
I think
doing the experimentation now?
Well, Google is doing it, but I think the outsiders are out there somewhere, but I think they're obscured by a real criminal class misusing the technology to blackmail hospitals and threaten to shut them down if they don't send them a lot of money. So I think that sort of shit is so overwhelming that the more playful left or anarchic leaning hackers almost feel shy about any bragging rights that they might have. I mean, the creation of the dark web probably to a great extent came from people with a counterculture feeling. And I mean, even the early beginnings of 4chan and then Anonymous coming out of 4chan before the so-called alt-right came out of 4chan, and they're fucking around with that religious cult that's not coming to my name right now. No, I'm trying to think of begins with a Scientology. I mean that's an odd history right there. Moving from 4chan to Anonymous, my T-shirt has an Anonymous face on it, along with the Steal This Singularity. I'm trying to sell T-shirts today. Not really. I don't have any for sale. So that spirit never ends. There are people out there are true outsiders, who are finding ways to mess around. I have no doubt. I don't necessarily get hip to all those things that are going on because I'm not that active. I'm not running a magazine. And, you know, there's still a gathering every year of hackers. I'm spacing on the name of it right now, to my great shame. A lot of times words don't get from my brain to my mouth because I'm 69 years old.
You know, it's happening to me now lately. And I'm going to say it's due to stress and not age, but it may be both. So I'm there with you. Weren't you guys supposed to be like helping us get past this point where age would take our brain cells away? And what about
I know those drugs, they didn't work. Well, first of all, the memory drugs, I forgot to take them. So yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people swear by them. They probably are they might be okay. You know, I mean, I just have various stomach problems and issues with getting irritated too easily to take these brain drugs that are, if they
brain drugs
cumulatively,
IBS.
Yeah, if they cumulatively increase intelligence, I don't know, but they are stimulants, and I can't really take stimulants much more than a green tea extract or a caffeine chocolate at this point in my life. So I might have missed the boat. It might be this stuff is doing really well now. It's working really well, and I'm a little bit. Yeah, thanks for the guy who just mentioned DEF CON. I can't stop looking at the comments. Yeah, the comments are great. They seemed so mean before I got on here, and now they're good. So
this is a nice bunch, but it's also mixed with Doug
Lane's comments. There'll be some
Doug
mean,
Lane's
I'm sure. Now that I asked for it, I'm gonna get it.
That's my audience. No one wants my audience. Hey, I remember in the 90s. Hey, this is my favorite beginning of every sentence. I remember in the 90s. I remember in the 90s, I had a friend who was like, I was 20 something, like 21, and he was like 31. And I wanted to go to this place that served smart drinks and you could dance. And he's like, explain this to me. I drink something that's making me smarter. And then what I want to do is listen to rave music and dance.
It did seem like a waste. I mean, also people doing ketamine at raves. I mean, why do you want to stand up? Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty big fan base among ravers, so I don't want to harsh the mellow too much. But yeah, that was kind of silly. I mean, it's a good place for some people I know to market their drinks.
Do you think that the transhumanist and the kind of like biotechnology direction is that where you can find more of these kind of experimental hacker types?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, certainly the people messing around with alleged intelligence increased drugs and stuff that may or may not slow down aging. I'm not completely cynical about this. I'm at the point in 2021 America wondering why people would want to live a long time. But, you know, there are certainly people who are working on that. And, you know, there are some things that show the appearance, at least scientifically, of possibly working. But I don't swear by any of it. And since I stopped being paid to be a transhumanist, I sort of stopped paying much attention to it.
So how much did they pay you back in the day to be a transhumanist?
Not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you know, it almost got up to a living wage at some point. I mean, there are a lot of wealthy people involved in transhumanism, a lot of right-wing wealthy people, you know, some liberals. There are Marxist transhumanists. People don't really know that. There's a wide variety. Probably the average person there is sort of a mainstream liberal who doesn't pay a lot of attention to politics, actually, but they have a reputation for being right-wing anarchists and libertarians, and those are some of the loudest voices out of transhumanism. Of course, Peter Thiel,
Do you think, would you put Nick
a
Land in that
blood
category?
drinking transhumanist. I don't know if he's still drinking the blood or not, but I mean, he's an example. And Jeffrey Epstein was mixing it up in the transhuman world, and I think he wanted to have his own part of the universe to populate with progeny in the old-fashioned way. But it's sort of my vague memory of one of his ideas.
Who doesn't want that? Did you ever meet or know Aubrey de Grey? I mean, that may be a little bit.
Oh yeah, I know Aubrey. On. Yeah, I mean, I like Aubrey. He's got a good sense of humor.
Yeah. I interviewed Aubrey a while back and actually published a book of that interview. And my feeling was I was either interviewing one of the most important people of all human history, or I was completely wasting my time. And I couldn't tell which one. But Aubrey de Grey wanted to overcome aging and extend the lifespan indefinitely.
He's still doing it.
Is he? I thought
Aubrey he's still got his project going. Yeah, never ends. Most people who get on these trips never come off it.
Well, I thought he got canceled. You know what I mean? Though. Did you know that
he got into some trouble?
There you go.
An allegation of sexual harassment, I think, but I think he overcame it or came over it or whatever.
He did one of those two things.
But I mean, Aubrey. I mean, one thing I like about Aubrey, when I was at a conference, transhumanist conference, and we got into his car, he played some really dark British punk rock, which I think showed me a little bit of his spirit, or maybe he's just somebody who is alive in the 21st century.
What I remember about interviewing him was that I kept trying to ask him questions about how would indefinite life extension alter the culture of society, alter the structure of society, alter the political economy of society, and he just sort of was confused by those questions.
I asked him
about that.
I asked him the same question. I think somewhere on H Plus website, if you try to look it up, there might be an answer. I don't know if it was any less confused than yours. I mean, I don't think he really took on the question too much. I mean, the idea. I mean, this was part of the feeling at Mondo 2000, really, even that. Acceleration was its own good thing, and we would work it all out later.
Yeah, I feel as though the reason I interviewed Aubrey de Grey was I feel as though people on the left give way too much away to the right. Like the idea of not getting old and dying is somehow right wing now. I mean, that seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
But I do understand that people might have a lot of objections just around population explosion or a variety of other issues. But the point is that if you ask any individual, especially when they get older, if they'd rather not feel aches and pains, not be sick, have better skin, be more physically active, they're all going to say yes. So I think of Aubrey de Grey as basically working on advancing medical science and health and to a tremendous degree, if he is indeed able to do the things that or any of the things that he claims that he's going to start doing.
Well, I would say life extension is healthcare. Immortality is probably a fantasy, you know, and you know, a lot of people in the transhumanoid sphere tend to go for the wild, fantastic fantasy stuff as a sort of enjoyable way to share their time and talk, and it's sort of masturbatory, but also great inspiration to a lot of science fiction writers, cyberpunks and so forth. I mean, the cyberpunks went wild with the idea of calling the human body the meat as something to have a little bit of contempt for, and something that we might want to try to overcome, or maybe eat. I'm not, but probably just overcome.
Kuba, do you got something?
So I think that you're right about acceleration and this kind of disrupt everything mentality, because a lot of cyberpunk perspectives get picked up in the corporate culture of Silicon Valley. And one reason why cyberpunk is sometimes hard to identify for younger people is because it's ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
At least
Move fast and break stuff.
Yeah, as an attitude that's associated with progress and people looking for the future. Maybe a question to kind of like sum things up is there anything that shouldn't be broken? What are the limits of experimentation before you start breaking things that can't be fixed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big theme of the book. I'm not sure I reach any conclusions, but I mean, the central metaphor for Mondo 2000 came from a guy called Morgan Russell. And he came up with this for the magazine Reality Hackers, which was the forerunner to Mondo 2000. And he called it a beribboned letter bomb to the core address of consensus reality. And what I go into in the book is that we kind of need to patch together some kind of consensus from the shards of the reality that we successfully exploded. So, I mean, I would start there. I would say that there are a lot of things while we are still embodied and needful human beings in a world and a culture in which for example, our rulers still commit warfare and so forth. There are a lot of things that are pretty old-fashioned that we need to patch up. We need to patch up the body. The end of history didn't really work out at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. I think we all felt a little enthusiastic, actually. Somebody said they wanted to ask me about the Cold War earlier. We all felt a little enthusiastic about the end of history. It really fit into the accelerationist model. And we didn't end up with that. And we found out that one world neoliberalism was not going to deliver. I sort of knew that it wasn't going to deliver, and also thought, well, maybe combined with technology and given a few years and given the freaks taking over, maybe we can make it all work somehow. I hate to go on that weird tangent toward the end of the show because I can't defend it, but yeah, I mean, I think there's limits to accelerationism. I don't embrace it. I embrace aspects of it. I mean, there's a rapture. I mean, people who've done good speed know that there's a rapture in speed and acceleration and feeling accelerated. There's that point at which you sort of get past the agitation and you enter into this space that feels overwhelmingly good. And that can be a place of insight and creation and psychosis. And, it appears to, after maybe 30 years of worshiping acceleration, it appears to tilt towards psychosis, I would say.
Someone says, all I know is that anything that libertarians are excited about is probably psychopathic and genocidal. and all I'll say is, not to defend libertarians, but
I have some of my best friends are.
Right. Well, now you're canceled. But
okay.
No.
Is one of your best friends Glenn Greenwald, Doug?
I don't know, Glenn.
He was the one who said that libertarians were his best friends. I didn't mention that. What I'll say is that the libertarians are this little pocket of bourgeois freedom. They have a definition of freedom. They love freedom and individual liberty, and but they limit it to bourgeois freedom. And we shouldn't despise the libertarians. We should transcend them. We should create libertarianism that's both individually free and also collectively free.
Yeah.
where we live in power as individuals and together. That's when the human race will really be living amongst the stars forever and eternal youth. There we go.
in the book, I
past.
define 20th century counterculture as leaning toward being left libertarian, and not in a strict, well thought ideological way, but in terms of having hostility towards coercion and also having hostility towards greed and an interest in sharing. So I'm not sure we're still with that now, but it's out there somewhere.
I definitely want to on the bonus half of the show. I definitely want to get into the libertarian argument a little bit more, especially when talking about the idea of a cyber utopia in the end of the Cold War. And Facebook announced its change to Meta.
Oh, they did that already?
Yeah, they announced today. And our good friend of show, Michael Harris, who wrote a couple books that Doug knows about, Stay Alive and Welcome to the Rebellion, has finished his latest book. It's not out yet, of course, about the metaverse. I've been talking to him while he's been writing his book, and it's been a very interesting journey watching him go on and writing this book about the idea of the metaverse. So I definitely want to get into that with you guys as well. Are you down, Doug?
You know what? I think I'm faded. Can you guys go on without me? And got to get my kids from dinner in just a minute. Is that bad? If you hadn't asked, I would have just stayed forever. But you asked.
Damn it, man! Aren't you just gonna order Popeyes?
You know what? I was. I literally was. I literally was.
Doug's just gonna order Popeyes. Them kids, them poor kids eat so much Popeyes chicken.
Look, I'm having a little bit of a stressful time right now. I can't be making. I got pork chops in the fridge. I can make some pork chops for you.
You're not gonna make any pork chops, man. Quit lying. Motherfuckers is finna get 2 pieces. Just hush. You staying with me, Coob?
Yeah, I can stay.
Oh, listen, that was so reluctant. Nobody likes me.
No, I like you.
Pascal's not here.
Just fading.
Jesus.
I ended up staying up all night last night, and it's 5. People were talking to me at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was crazy. So I'm faded.
Well, I'm happy to hang out until.
That's what I'm talking about. The OG is hanging out, and
until somebody asks me a question that reveals that I don't know any details about anything. I'm an absolute total generalist and can't dig down into specifics. But yeah, sure, let's do it for a little while.
Well, seriously, I'm going to send you another link on our Facebook chat. Kuba, I'll send you the new link to the show. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget, Saturday we'll be coming at you again, 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you guys haven't seen it, Pascal Robert's Mau Mau Hour episode is up now as well. What else we got going on, Kuba? That's all I can think of.
We've got Daniel Bessner coming on next Saturday, I think.
Oh no shit! I forgot about that. Yes, yeah. Daniel, we're doing a show with Daniel Bessner's American Prestige. And Friday, me, Doug Lain, Are You Serious, Daniel Bessner, Kira Rogers are going to be at Stories Bookstore
Thursday.
Is it? I thought it was,
no, it's Friday.
Friday.
It's Friday. You're right. No, I'm traveling on Thursday. Sorry.
Yeah, you're traveling there on Thursday, but we do it on Friday.
Right. Okay.
So Friday we'll be at Stories Bookstore.
Yep.
And what's the panel discussion going to be about, Doug?
It's going to be about Cyberdystopia and the decline of American empire.
There you go. Not about condom washing.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
All right. So we're going?
Yep.
All right.